Hey, this is Allie X, and I'm going to be going through every track on my album, Girl With No Face. Weird World. Weird World. And I tried changing my position at my boots in the shot. Weird World, I was in Oakville, Canada, which is like a suburb outside of Toronto, and I was at my parents' place in the summer during the pandemic. And it was sort of the first song that I wrote and produced that summer that I was like, this could maybe be like the beginning of something. And it kind of like, it was like an early sort of imprint of a sound and an excitement, which eventually turned into this record. You know, Weird World was originally the working name of the album. It was sort of like the project file that I had for years on my computer. And then toward the end, I was like, no one can say it. No one can say it. Like, this can't. And then it also just started to feel like it wasn't really an album about this dystopian world anymore. It sort of became something else. So thematically, it didn't work either. But I'd say that the song Weird World really, like, it's sort of like the flagship song of like of the whole writing of the album and this experience that I'm talking about.
Describe like visually what a weird world looks like.
I guess at the time I was picturing like a sort of a dystopian but very sparkly pink and purple like night scene. Yeah, like in some big city in the future. And I saw myself. It's funny actually saying this out loud because it's all just been in my head. I've like never said it out loud, but I think I saw myself in like some sort of tight black leather outfit, like, you know, storming the streets and like wailing at everyone or something.
Busy city, or is it like?
I think it's kind of an abandoned scene at night. There was a lot of like lights, but not. I don't think there were too many people about. But then at other times, I think later on, I pictured this in like Berghain or something in Berlin, and like, you know, people sort of like a ton of people like thrashing and dancing and sweating and that sort of thing as well. But yeah, that initial thought was kind of the first thing I described, like a pink and purple, maybe like almost Tokyo or something. I don't know.
What was the second song you wrote?
I think You Slept on Me, like the earliest version was the second song that I wrote. I had written in my notes, You slept on me, or I think the idea was, why did you sleep on me? I was writing most of those lyrics in the summer of 2020, and I remember just thinking they were really funny and just like being very entertained. I think it was 200 BPM, the original idea, which is insanity. And I was like, okay, I gotta slow this down a little bit. So we went down to, I think 182 is what I settled on. Favorite lyric. I'm an icon, honey. This isn't a chore, and I need to make money, so give me yours. I like that.
It's a very funny song, like lyrically, but did it stem from a funny place, or?
Yeah, oh yeah, everyone asked me like, are you sad that you're slept on? And I'm actually, I think part of me would like to be bigger and more successful, but part of me has realized that like, there's a lot of advantages to having privacy and being, you know, not known in most public places. Like I don't get spotted too often, and I kind of like that, and I like that it's at a scale where I can control it creatively. Everyone wants that in the industry, wants this big explosion of money essentially, and they can all get their piece, but no one's thinking about sustainability or anything like that. So I've been really grateful for my very, very, very slow climb. I'm actually, it's been super educational, and now I know my business inside and out, and like, yeah, and I appreciate privacy and the mental well-being that comes with it. So, not to say like I'm a super ambitious person, but no, You Slept on Me was really just a quip back at like Twitter comments, like a funny quip. It's difficult to remember the next song. It was probably Our Lady of Sorrows, actually. Our Lady of Sorrows didn't have a top line until a year later. It was just the instrumental, which in its original form I didn't even write. Like it was my boyfriend's beat. And then when I was finishing Girl with No Face, it sort of didn't quite fit perfectly. So I'm glad I had this opportunity to include it. It's actually about Our Lady of Perpetual Sorrow, which is like this like saint from, like, sometimes you'll see like a church or a school called like Our Lady of Perpetual Sorrow Academy or whatever. And I'd seen it somewhere and I was like, what does this even mean? Like, it's so dramatic. So I Googled it, and there's like this like saint, and she's like crying, and there's like all these like swords sticking into her heart. And I was just like, what a queen. Like, she deserves a song. But it's super cunty. Like, that's the main thing. Like, we just made it super cunty.
Do you have a favorite lyric?
Yes. Let's think. Don't you shed a tear for me. Shut up. Don't say a thing. My sadness is perpetual. So is my broken wing. Spread out all my poison in a puddle on the floor. You can roll your face in it, you dirty little whore. That was Tove's verse. Wait, I strike a pose for you young hoes with 7 daggers in my heart. Maybe that's the best one. My partner George, who's really the only other collaborator on the record, like on the original record, he'd made a beat for me in like 2020 that I then reproduced, and it became the track of Our Lady of Sorrows. And then I brought it to a session with Tove, and we were at Max Martin Studios. And yeah, we were just kind of like, once we came up with this idea, we were just laughing a lot. Like, we had a ton of fun. And it was basically written that night, but then it took years of development for me to find the right angle to the production.
And what made you bring it back for this one?
Well, it was on the final sort of list when I was finishing the record. But then Justin Meldal Johnson, who I finished the record with, we had limited time, and we probably only had time for one more song, so I had to choose between Saddest Smile and Our Lady of Sorrows. And I felt like the record, Saddest Smile just felt like it fit the sequence a bit better. And this one, vocally, I had trouble with this one, so that sort of also made me want more time with it. Queen of the night, oh, I say you dance alone. It was Tove's melody, and she's not on this version of it, but when she sang it, it was perfect for Tovlo voice, but not perfect for Allie X voice. It's sort of hard to like put it all in sequence of how it was written. Girl with No Face, it was kind of written in 2014. We had just met, George and I remember he texted me this idea. Forget what he called it. It didn't have lyrics at the time, but it had everything else. It had dun da 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 and and most of the melodies in the song. So I was like gagged by it. Like, I thought it was so cool. So I actually attempted to finish it for Collection 2, and I couldn't find like the right sonic identity. I tried again for, God, I may have even tried for Super Sunset and Cape God, and it just never worked, because what I was doing was so pop, and that song and that riff is very post-punk, and it just sort of stuck out like a sore thumb, and I just felt like a poser. But then for this album, Girl with No Face, I really started to move into that sort of like new wave world, and I was like, okay, this has to be on this album. And yeah, finally we kind of cracked the production on it. But even then it was difficult, because everything was synth driven on Girl with No Face, but this needed, every time I tried to take that bass line and put it on a bass synth, it didn't work. It lost its air, it lost its feel. So even then it was a bit of a challenge, but yeah, we finally found it, and we kept the bass guitar as the base of the song. 10 years later it came out.
When you finished it, or maybe it happened before you finished it,
yeah.
How did you know it was going to be the title of the album?
I didn't know till the very end. It was sort of like in that last month of finishing songs that I decided that was the name, because like I said, Weird World was... It was like, it wasn't rolling off the tongue, and it no longer really, when I started the project, I had this idea of this dystopian fantasy album, and then it became much more personal than that. Weird World represented to me this sort of dystopian fantasy idea, as well as it being personal. But yeah, eventually it just became this album became way more sort of raw than that is the word I would use. And the term Weird World felt sci-fi to me, and the album didn't feel that way. It felt like something guttural that needed a different title.
Do you want to sing us?
You want me to sing it again?
Yeah.
Okay. Eu quero uma sopinha de galinha. Eu quero uma sopinha com cebola, limão, com peixe e macarrão. Eu quero uma sopinha. That means I love my chicken soup, my little chicken soup. I love my chicken soup with onions and lemon, with fish and pasta. I love my chicken soup.
Incredible.
Yeah. It's for the Brazilians. It's a take on my song Galina. Yeah. Because galinha means chicken in Portuguese. Moving on though to the real song, Galina. I had like a motif in my head in the elevator back to my apartment that was like ba ba da 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 da, something like that. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And so I got in right from that elevator and recorded that. And by the end of that night, I think I had like the chorus for Galina. And that part, that first motif, I eventually muted it because then it was not as good as the other parts that I wrote. But yeah, it's funny how that happens. The lyrics took about a week, I think. And like with most of the songs on Girl With No Face, I could do a sketch quite quickly, and then I would always really dig into sound design and programming later. So like the drums and the bass from that night probably weren't close to what they ended up being. I do think that the synth bass on Galina is probably makes it. And so that really, when I finally got into like the nitty gritty of it, like the instrumental really elevated the song. But yeah, I had like Wake Up Galina, I think was what was in my notes, and it was based on an experience with this like mystical Russian lady who made cream for my eczema and then just retired overnight and wouldn't tell anyone how she made it. And so yeah, that had been in my notes, and that was what inspired that song. For Deluxe, Empress did a feature, which was really fun to have like these remixes and collaborations on the deluxe version, because again, it was like completely isolated the original version. So it's been fun getting other people's tastes and flavors on this. And yeah, I thought she sang it beautifully. It's got a good bridge, that song. I like the bridge.
It really does. Bridges are so underutilized nowadays.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, because you don't really need a bridge, I guess, if you're going for TikTok virality. That's something I totally ignored on this album as well. Like every song was like 5 minutes long. I just like didn't care that songs are now supposed to be really short. Black Eye's quite long. Black Eye was already long, and then Justin and I decided to just do this really long dramatic crossfade ending that extended it like another minute. There was a point where I was like, am I gonna have to add a second like disc to the vinyl to make room for this ending? But we made it work. That might have been the next song that we wrote that we wrote in summer 2020.
You and me.
You and me, yeah. When we wrote it? No, actually, it wasn't written in summer 2020. It was written in the fall of 2020, the very beginning of that song. The start of it was bum 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 da 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 dum dum dum, the synth riff, and that I could not find that song for so long. I did so many versions of it, but I was really stuck on that synth riff. I was like, no, this is such a good riff, like it has to. So yeah, I was really stubborn about it. The music video for Black Eye was my friend and stylist Kylie Kimmel who gave me this sort of seed of an idea when she sent images of Marcel Duchamp. I think I might be mispronouncing that. He's like a Dada artist, French. He had this sort of fascination with the game of chess. And I just thought, like a chess music video, something chess inspired would make a really good music video, even just in terms of like keeping it to a black and white color palette and making some sort of runway version of the chess pieces, like as dancers. And yeah, so that's sort of how it started. And then it became a whole to-do. It was a whole to-do. It was a whole process. It was difficult sort of conceptualizing how we were going to make it a chess game. Basically, like, can you make this into a human being? Like, you have to get kind of poetic about it. So Kylie, the stylist I mentioned earlier, her and I went back and forth on how to humanize the chess pieces, basically. And I thought she did such a brilliant job. She really she thrifted and just like found a lot of white and black pieces and then sewed them together, created all the head pieces herself. It sort of looked like a Comme des Garçons runway, I think, in the end. And then my friend Brian, who actually, he co-directed the Weird World music video, he did the choreography for Black Eye, and he did a really great job as well. And then like we were gonna build this whole thing for a chessboard, and I was like a floor. Like a floor, and I was like, it looks like a Katy Perry music video or something. So I was like, let's just take chalk and like, chalk powder and just make it really simple. Sometimes simple is the best. When you have limited resources and you try to do this sort of very high pyrotechnics production value, it usually falls short. That's what I find. So I tried to make choices in Black Eye that could be simple and minimalist and effective. And I think I mostly succeeded. Yes, Off with Her Tits, not always an easy one for me to like explain. So I'll do my best. That was like everyone knows Off with Her Head from Alice in Wonderland. So it just came to me one day, and I wrote it in my long list of titles and lyrics. And then I think it was maybe 6 months later that I was in the bath and just like, having a day, struggling, not liking my body, and felt really, I get very like full of rage when I'm upset. I always get angry before I get to like sad or scared. Like anger is sort of my go-to. And yeah, just like in the bath, fucking angry, and started writing these lyrics that were just like so dark but so funny to me. I was like, this is something. But then I didn't have the music for it. That didn't come to me right away. At one point, there was a whole other Off with Her Tits that I tried to do, and like I took those lyrics, set it to music, and then I was like, no, this isn't it. That was probably in like 2021. In 2022, it was so strange. I was at like a Christmas party, like a family gathering, and again, me just being like, in this like dark place and at the wrong time, I went off in another room and I wrote it and was like sort of darkly like cackling to myself.
I'm just imagining.
I had a Christmas party.
Brooding.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, I was brooding, and I was just I was like I think I was on a bed like this, and I just had my laptop, and I was sort of like, I just had the mic that was in and I didn't have a MIDI controller or anything, so I was just taking one bass like audio sample and just pitching it around and I was using the computer mic, and I was just like singing into the computer, like, stubborn Aphrodite, you got me in the tits. And it was like, I had to be really quiet as well. So the original demo is that, sometimes I just want to rip my body apart. Like it's like a really, and I know people out there can relate. It's just like it goes beyond discomfort and it's so, and even now as I'm saying it, I'm like, oh my God, it sounds so serious and so emo. And that's what I love about the song, is that like I took that really disgusted, dark, horrible feeling and made it fucking funny, like, to myself. Like, I don't even care who thinks it's funny or not, but to me it's fucking funny. And like, there's so much power in that. And I am a really dry person, like a dry-witted person, which doesn't always fly in the US. Sometimes, I mean, all the time, I find myself rubbing people the wrong way with my humor. But like, my dad is from England, and I think, you know, they kind of get it a bit better out there. And this song is full of that. And the album's kind of full of my wit as well, which is interesting to me because this is the first time that I really tackled something lyrically by myself. It was interesting to me to see what happened to my writing voice when nobody else was a part of it. On Girl With No Face, my lyrics, the nature of them definitely changed and became very sort of sarcastic. Bon Voyage. Bon Voyage is the most hands-off I've been on any song on this album. Because most of them I was birthing them, and it was a long, laborious process. But with Bon Voyage, I actually took an idea that was pretty developed from George, my partner, and it was something that he'd been working on, and I heard it like for his project, and I heard it through like the door, and I was really compelled by what I heard, and I walked in, and I was like, "What is that?" And he was like, "Oh, it's just something I'm working on." And I was like, "Could it be for me?" And he was like, "We'll see. So I think that was like a long time ago, and I kept bringing it up. And I was like, "It could be a single." And so, yeah, for Deluxe, I thought it could be a great lead single. It wasn't like the like in the computer, like, thing that was there for all the other songs, which quite frankly was a nice relief. The lyrics are also very sort of like a new chapter of my life, not so much where I was when I was writing Girl With No Face. It's like this sort of longing to have like almost like a return to nature. It feels like something more. The lyrics on Girl With No Face feel very masculine to me, a lot of them, and this feels more feminine. I don't know if the listener's going to get that at all, but that's how I feel. Like something divine is sort of like calling me into nature, into this maybe new chapter of my life. And I'll be interested to see where my next record goes, because it almost feels like it could be like a transitory song or something.
Bon Voyage talks about a journey. Where is it?
It's somewhere like I see water. I spent the summer on a lake in Canada, my homeland. And I had this like real connection. I've always had a connection to water, and especially to lakes. I grew up around like the Great Lakes, and I miss them. And there's something about water that I'm just like, I think about it all the time. I think about it more than any normal person should, like how much I just want to be around water. So I think it's that, and that's at least what I'm seeing in my head. And then it's just this desire to let go of all this stuff that I've been processing, I think, through Girl With No Face, and to become someone a little more peaceful and a little more mature, a little more kind and compassionate. Like, yeah, just to turn into. Just to allow myself the space, I think, to turn into like a better person.
That's cute.
Yeah, it is cute.
It's a literal farewell to what you had been writing about.
Yeah, I think it is. And again, like, it's not usually till I sit down and do these sort of things, like, or do interviews, that I actually sometimes understand what I was writing. Like, it just sort of comes out. In analyzing it, I think that's accurate. Hardware Software, I think I had seen like a French film with this very dissonant, like they were using all these weird modes and scales, and had a very dissonant sort of soundtrack and theme. And the next day I woke up and just thought, wouldn't it be interesting to try to write a song over a progression like that? And that's how Hardware Software started. And my like weird spoken rap thing on top, that was like just, it was pretty much all improvised in one take, and I was like, cool. Like I don't know. It just sort of came out. That was one that the demo kind of was the final. It was we just added a couple little things, me and Justin Meldal Johnson, but yeah, fans are like, I hate that one. Or some people are like, it's a commentary on politics, or like, so there's a wide scope of interpretations. I love when a song causes a bit of a controversy. When I did those lyrics, like, I really don't know what I was thinking. And analyzing that one now, it seems like there's some sort of like technology taking over kind of vibe, and like almost like in my head, like a weird sexualization of technology, which I had no idea. It's not something that I think about. I think I was thinking about like fucking a computer and like what that means. Don't know. Okay, here, I'll give you more. I'm gonna give you more. So when I started making this album, I had probably never spent this much time on a computer in a DAW before. I was constantly in this virtual world, and I would go for like 8 hours at a time. Like anyone that works in like one of these creative software programs all the time knows what I mean. You sort of like you're no longer in the real world, you're like in the computer. And I think that's kind of what I mean. Like it almost, the computer in the virtual space almost became like personified or something. And I wasn't thinking of like, it wasn't any sort of fantasy. It was just sort of the idea that I was almost like maybe like flirting with a computer. I don't know. I really don't know. These are all sort of like analyses that came like, a couple of years later when I listened to my lyrics, and I'm like, what the fuck? What was that? Yeah. Staying power.
You wrote it, apparently.
Allegedly I wrote it.
Who did you rip it off from?
Staying power came to me on a hike. I was by myself after many months of taking a break. When I got sick in 2022, I just sort of stopped everything for a while, and I was just like rehabilitating, and I was on a hike in the Palisades. And that's the funny thing about taking a break. It's hard for me to take breaks, but whenever I do, and probably other people can relate to this, musically, like the well fills back up, and like things just start flowing every time I enforce a musical break. So I was just walking, and I started hearing da 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 da, I got the da, and then staying, and the lyrics came to me right away too. I have that voice memo somewhere. So I got home, and I just made a sketch, nothing too impressive, but just so I could remember the idea. And that one also happened pretty quickly. Galina and Staying Power they were fast to write them. I feel like I'm a lifer. Like I've chosen to do this over everything else. I can't stop doing this. So yeah, I don't know how many people will be aware of my work, but I'll always be making work for sure.
How do you think that they'll feel when in like 50 years from now, when you look exactly the same and you're still making? How do you think they'll feel about that?
Oh man, we all start to crack at one point or another, Like I'm trying to think of like I don't want to name names, but like pretty much every celebrity that had like the best plastic surgeon in town, like eventually they just start to deflate a bit.
I feel like you're a really visually driven person.
Yeah.
So what do you see in your head when you like listen, or when you were making Staying Power, maybe?
It's so dark, I don't want to say it.
Everything's dark.
I know, I mean, I'm not like a happy-go-lucky person. I don't even know how to make jokes. I see blood. That's what I see.
Like fairy level blood?
I see like, yeah. No, not like that. I just see, Staying Power is like, it's about my superpower, which is pain tolerance. Like I don't know many people like me in that sense that can sort of like keep going in like very physically painful situations and uncomfortable situations, and I think that's ultimately like why I've had a career, because it's not like I've ever had like a hit song or anything like take off. Like it's sort of like it's my tolerance. Like I can take on a lot and I can keep going. And that's essentially what staying power is about.
You have resilience.
Yeah, I definitely have resilience.
Yeah, which I think a lot of artists lack. They want it now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do want, they have an expectation of sort of moving to LA and getting rich and famous, and I never had that going into it. I always expected things to be hard, and then they were, and not to say that made it easy, but it definitely, yeah, it made me, it gave me resilience.
Did you reflect on any of your like early times in LA when you were writing any of the songs on the album?
Yeah, sort of. Not really, though. I think I was reflecting on my early times in LA on my EP, Super Sunset, more. This album was almost like I'm reflecting on my whole kind of life and how I've lived it. Staying Power also has a lot of sort of sarcasm in it as well. And yeah, I don't know. This album was sort of like a coming to grips with who I am, for better or for worse. And yeah, it has a lot of anger in it and a lot of stubbornness, I think. Even in its sound, it was like completely off trend. Like I just did my thing. I don't know if I'll ever do an album like this again, but yeah, I sort of I compare it to looking into a mirror for too long. It was a very emboldening and awakening and disorienting experience.
I want to talk about John and Jonathan. I know you've talked about this a few times.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
So John and Jonathan is a song about a real life couple named John and Jonathan who live in New York. I was playing the Bowery Ballroom as an opener in like 2017, I think, and I was like doing my hustle downstairs, selling my merch and taking pictures and stuff. And that's when I met John and Jonathan. They were in line and they came up and it was like, "Hi, I'm John and this is my boyfriend Jonathan." And I was like, "Wait, you're John and Jonathan? That's iconic." I was like, "I have to write a song about that, blah, blah, blah." And then years later, Jonathan turned out to be in the press and was interviewing me for, I forget what the outlet was, but it was from Mistress Violet, and then reminded me that I'd said that I would write a song called John and Jonathan. And I was like, "Oh my God, I remember that." And I had forgotten, which is unlike me. Like normally I would have actually written that in my notes, but for whatever reason I'd forgotten. And I'm so glad he reminded me, because that day I had been working on the idea that became John and Jonathan, and I could not for the life of me think what it was about. And then the words John and Jonathan just worked so perfectly with the melody that we had, which was da na 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 na. So once I got John and Jonathan are on the town, John and Jonathan, they go up, they go down. Like the song just wrote itself. It was like done by the end of that night. And yeah, that's the story behind that. They actually interviewed me for the album. Like Jonathan, I think he moved to InStyle. So we did, when I was in New York, we did an interview. Jonathan interviewed me, and then John came to the interview. And it was very cute. And then actually they came on stage at my New York show as well. I've read Patti Smith's Just Kids and just hearing about like Suzanne Barsh's story and Klaus Nomi and Velvet Underground, all these different things, and like Club Kids, and I don't know. I think it was sort of almost like in a way like a love letter to New York and the idea of a city where like anything is possible in a broader way. Just thinking about it now, I've never said that before, but I think that's sort of, it was like almost a projection in a certain way. And then it was also an introspection of how I feel being like a public figure and being on stage, and the relationship with fans can be odd sometimes. Not to say that fans are doing anything wrong, but just the idea that you're seen as this person to be idolized is so strange to me because I feel so flawed. So there's a bit of that as well. Saddest Smile was the next song after Our Lady of Sorrows. Yeah, that came before Black Eye, that was written. And I was thinking of Giorgio Moroder. I wanted to write, like a very sort of cinematic chord progression. I didn't have lyrics for that song until I think a couple years later, but I had the melody. First of all, any song that I put out, it becomes the world's and it becomes the listeners. Like, I don't think there's ever a right and wrong. It's what it means to you. But I think there is almost a bit of self-deprecation in that song, which I don't think is obvious to people. But I go through my life in such a serious way sometimes. Like, I take things really harshly, and I feel really intense about most things, and I think in a way I'm like, I throw myself into these sort of like, I feel like I'm doing these sort of sacrificial acts all the time. And I think I'm sort of commenting on that in this song, like this need to, this way of being, like, of things being really heavy all the time. Truly Dreams is like maybe the most hopeful song on the record, I think. I was thinking about Queens when I wrote it, when I wrote the lyrics at least, and sort of their commitment to the art form and to the fantasy and to the dream of it all, with or without major success. They they're going to do their hustle, they're going to put on their looks, they're going to get out there and they're going to like live their lives really, really proudly. And I sort of see myself, I sort of relate more to drag queens than to other pop girls in a lot of ways. Very like one-stop shop DIY. I'm figuring out my looks. I'm doing all my things myself nowadays, and I really respect that. And beyond that, Truly Dreams, I thought it was a really nice way to end the album, because the whole album's like kind of vengeful and full of rage and like darkness, and then to end and be like, no, I'm okay, it's cool. It's sort of like whimsical kind of melodies. It's also kind of one of the only songs that actually has a groove, like it's not on the grid. I mean, it is on the grid, but it sort of has a bounce to it. It sort of just breaks the format of the record a little bit too. And also the bridge is so epic on that one. Or it's not, I don't even know if you can call that the bridge, but like the instrumental part that then like modulates into the guitar solo. And yeah, I enjoy that. It took a few different lyric directions and none of them quite worked. And then when I sang Truly Dreams Never Die, I was like, oh yeah, that's it. That's the song. And I was able to figure it out from there. And that's like when I started thinking of Queens. A lot of the album was inspired by dark wave, new wave, post-punk, and like I'll never be playlisted on those playlists because I'm a pop artist and it's ultimately a pop album. But I wanted to work with artists that really do occupy that space and sort of could take the songs into that space. And so those were the kind of artists that I was seeking out, and it's been really cool to have collaborators finally on this project. So there's Sidewalks and Skeletons, Trust, which is my friend Robert Alphonse from Toronto, Dionysus, Vestron Vulture did a Weird World remix, VS Slows or Versus Slows, I'm not sure which, that came through my friend Bill Coleman, who's like a legend, and someone in his camp did that and I really liked it. It was important to me to do this album for a number of reasons, and one of them is to find out what's actually just coming from me. Like if it's just me, what does that sound like? What are those words like? Like a real sort of self-exploration, I guess. It's as a body of work, it's definitely the first time I've done that. A song like Bitch is a good early example of me producing and writing something by myself, which was another reason, that turned out to be my most successful song. So that was another reason I thought this was worth a go. I feel like it's my job to keep educating myself and soaking up quality art so that I can become this sort of vessel to interpolate it all in hopefully a fresh way. And I also do believe in like divinity in art, and I think I'm also a vessel for that. I tend not to stress too much about, has this been done before? Is this interesting? I do kind of trust that it's all a process and that every person is unique enough that what comes out of us deserves to be out there and heard and seen. And I also think it's such an exciting path to follow, being an artist and to be a curious person, because your life is so interesting. You get to be a sponge, you get to continue to grow and get better. I think my work has gotten better, and I'm excited to become, in however many years I have to live, to become like the best version of a songwriter that I can, and a producer or whatever, an artist that I can be. I think it's a really exciting life.
What's next for Allie X? Is there anything on the horizon?
I just like, the restless sea is calling me, like I'm not exactly sure, but I feel a change in the wind. I think like every album I do every body of work I do tends to be quite different, and I allow myself to just evolve, and so do my fans, which is very nice of them. I'm not sure exactly what's next, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be quite different than Girl with No Face. Okay, guys, that's it. That's Girl with No Face track by track. Thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you at a show. Bye!
Oh, wow!
How did that look?
That's really good.